Congressman, I know you've been able to see things before they've been declassified and made public, so this story may not have all the fresh shock for you as it does for readers of the public reporting on it. But it is, even for this second Trump team, shocking.
Yeah, Nicole. And I mean, the key phrase in that email that the New York Times has published, and I should stress that I have not seen the underlying email, so, you know, we'll use words like alleged. But the key line there is that it not be used against the DNI or the president. That is a completely radical way of characterizing intelligence, right? Intelligence is provided for the DNI and for the president so that they can make good decisions. So what you see, if that email is accurate, you see the chief of staff of the DNI not thinking about providing accurate information, which is life or death for the American Republic, but providing information that is politically convenient. This, you know, Americans will remember the pressure that the Bush-Cheney White House put on the CIA to find weapons of mass destruction, and how that led to a catastrophic war and thousands of dead Americans. So the politicization of intelligence, the asking the intelligence community to do anything other than to report their best shot at the truth is about as serious and is about as dangerous as it gets.
I mean, in the interest of disclosure, I was a part of that administration, and I take your point. Congressman, let me read more from the reporting from the New York Times on exactly how the Trump cabinet reacted when some of the facts and the inner workings of the Trump intelligence agencies were revealed. The Times reports this, quote, the Trump administration reacted with alarm to the disclosure of the intelligence assessment. On March 21st, a Friday, Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, who is also a former criminal defense lawyer for Trump, issued a statement saying the Justice Department was opening a criminal leak investigation while also portraying the Times article as inaccurate. The following Monday, March 24th, Kent sent an email to several people, including Michael Collins, then the acting head of the National Intelligence Council, attaching a copy of the Times article to his message and telling the team to look at it. Mr. Kent said it was necessary to rethink the assessment, according to multiple people who described it. The timeline is always what gets you, Congressman. I mean, this is after it was known that the intelligence community did not see a tie with fairly high confidence, with the exception of the FBI, was, I think, that very first public reporting in the New York Times, later corroborated by the Washington Post. But they did not see any ties operationally between the Maduro government and Tren de Aragua. After that is known, they tell him to rewrite the assessment. That seems to have the double-edged inappropriateness of a cover-up.
But politics is the
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And you see the usual playbook being used here, right? So you have a very serious allegation of the compromising of intelligence for political purposes, something that DNI Gabbard said she would not permit in her confirmation hearings. Here is a textbook example, if the facts are what they appear to be, of twisting intelligence to achieve a political end. That is not okay. And, of course, the Trump administration has reverted to the playbook of attacking the reporters who produced this. Think back a bazillion years ago to the Signalgate controversy, where Mike Waltz sets up a Signal chat, and Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic is included. He didn't ask to be included, but he's included. And what does the administration do? They attack Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic. And the problem with that, Nicole, apart from just its obvious disdain for the media and for the truth, is that eventually, you know, these two fired members of the National Intelligence Council, fired and accused of politicizing intelligence without any evidence that I have seen yet, that kind of statement, that kind of action will very quickly permeate the people of the intelligence community. And they'll get it. They'll get it. Now, look, they're professionals, right? So they're dedicated to doing what they're doing. I would point out that even after Joe Kent suggested that they alter or rethink or revisit or change their conclusions, they didn't do that. But over time, you know, people make adjustments. And pretty soon we're spending $90 billion a year on an intelligence community that, instead of telling us the truth and giving us the information we need to keep the American people safe, is slanting things to the political interests of the President of the United States. And that is a very bad place to be.
Mike Schmidt, this threat from Todd Blanche to, again, let me read from your colleagues reporting, to, quote, open a criminal leak investigation while also portraying the Times article as inaccurate, is a play run by Donald Trump. It's noted, I think, in some footnotes in the Mueller report in Volume 2, when he wanted Don McGahn to write a letter, I believe, lying about some reporting you've done. This is an impulse or an instinct that comes from the top.
Yeah, and look, if the story was inaccurate, then there's no classified information in it. Or, you can't sort of have it both ways, where you say, yes, yes, we're going to do a leak investigation, and no, the story's not accurate. Those two things don't add up. Look, what this whole thing cuts to the heart of is whether this is going to be an administration driven by the law and the facts or driven by the political whims of the president. And we're just increasingly seeing that that is what Trump wants. This is that his administration will go out and do the things that, he believes that he wants to do. Now, the interesting thing here is that my guess is that one of the reasons that this happened is that they were going to, at some point, have to make an argument before the courts about the underlying reason for why they were invoking the Alien Seditions Act. And because of that, they needed to have some sort of intelligence that showed that these individuals were being directed by a foreign government. And what it plays into is the larger question of how much the courts are going to be a check against Trump. And that's a story that we still see playing out. And we've seen, different examples of the courts pushing back on the administration. It seems to some extent, maybe, that Trump is afraid of going against everything the Supreme Court says. But at the same time, there's other things that we've seen that don't necessarily add up with that. But that's really what we're looking at as we go forward, is like, how much are the courts going to constrain this administration, be a check against this administration in this real true life example of checks and balances playing themselves out, not just in a history class for elementary and middle school kids. This is real life checks and balances, and with Congress not checking Trump at all, it just leaves the judiciary
as the only player in town. I want to press both of you on that point that Mike just made about what's happening in real time, because I think there's also reporting today that suggests that Trump's fixation on mass deportations absent due process is proceeding despite some real big losses in court. We'll bring you that reporting. We'll have that conversation as well after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
So you've said on Twitter that the FBI and the intelligence community were involved in planning and directing the riot. Is that correct?
Sounds like something I said, yeah.
And what evidence do you have for that claim?
So we've already identified that there were multiple confidential human informants ran by the FBI and other law enforcement agencies that were present in the crowd that day, directing, removing barriers, those types of things.
That's not true. Congressman Jim Himes, that's Joe Kent. How is he inside at the beating heart of our intelligence agencies?
Well, here we are. You could run similar statements or tweets made by the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who flirted with the notion that we were sponsoring viral research in the Ukraine, which, of course, was a Russian talking point. And so, very sadly, particularly in that office, we have people, just as we have at, the Health and Human Services in the form of Secretary Kennedy, people who have shown a disturbing willingness to embrace conspiracy theories. And in this case, and this is why this is particularly important, to do so in the service of right-wing fantasy, right-wing grievance, or even Russian propaganda.
I mean, Mike, we were talking about John Kelly in the last block, and there are moments, there are news cycles, there are days, and today is certainly one of them, where the absence of anybody who is faithful, if nothing else, to the truth is so glaring. Whether it's Trump rolling in a TV, dimming the lights and playing propaganda to another country's leader, whether it's that guy who is now the chief of staff at the of our most senior intelligence agency responsible for the president's PDB, telling other analysts to, quote, rewrite an assessment. What is your sense of what is now permissible, absent people like Kelly or Mattis or Milley around Donald Trump?
Well, I think what you see is an administration that's engaging in a lot more different types of efforts to push the president's agenda than in his first term. There was a lot of things that Trump wanted to do in his first term that the Kellys and the McGahns and the Mattises of the world stopped him from doing. And, you know, whether that was stuff at the border, whether that was stuff with using the Justice Department and such. So in the second term here, what we've seen is just, look, Justice Department investigations into the people that Trump wants investigated. Those things happened in the first term, but they only happened after Trump basically, you know, kicked and screamed about it for several years. And here we are in the fourth month of the administration, and we have already seen that. As you know, the Times reported last night, Andrew Cuomo is under investigation. The way that James Comey was treated by the Secret Service. These uses of the government's power were not things that we were seeing in the fourth month of Trump's administration. It was in the fourth month of his administration that he was still trying to fire James Comey and had a special counsel to deal with. He does not have those obstacles anymore. So not only is he moving faster, but there are just more things that they're doing. They're sending people out of the country in ways that they certainly weren't in the first term. They're being aggressive with their power in different ways. And they had 4 years to learn from what they think were the mistakes of the first 4 years. And, you know, in a sense, they were able to study, and they've gotten another bite at the apple here. Well,
I don't know how hard they study. They're in defiance right now of the U.S. Supreme Court. So we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. Mike Schmidt, Congressman Jim Imes, thank you for spending time with us on these developments. A quick break for us. We'll be right back.